Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Craft Eccentricity. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, and I'm here today with an MXR project share. Now, on Friday last week, I was posed a question by a couple of people, so today I'm going to try and fulfill that request, and that was, how do you paper piece and why do I choose the basic substrates or materials that I use? Well, that's quite a complicated question, really, when I stopped and I thought about it, because I will choose colour cardstock sometimes to paper piece when I want to get a certain feel and effect, i.e. cutesy, cartoony. And when I want to get something a little softer, a bit more grown up, then I'll tend to use my Touch 5 markers or watercolour. So it kind of depends on what I'm making and who it's for. And that will usually dictate the kinds of materials that I use. But sometimes I can, just see something and just know exactly what I'm going to use for it, i.e. whether it's cardstock or Dollar Tree foam board, etc. So anyway, today I've already paper pieced one thing and I've created a base for the card, but we're going to paper piece a girl and place it onto that card base. So I'm going to quickly show you the things that I have used. Now I'm going to put a sheet of white cardstock down here because that's going to help me in a minute when I start doing everything else. But I used a couple of flower elements from this die that I showed you last week. It is very grey here today, so I hope my camera's not going to play up too much. And I cut away a couple of flowers to use in my card base, so I used that die. I used my Easel die because people want to know, how does it bend up and how does it stand up? So that's already on my base and I will show that right at the very end. I've used the boot die from MXR because I wanted my little girl to have somewhere to live within the scene of the card, so I've used that and I can measure that fully made up. I use these two frames, which I absolutely love. They come in a set of 4, and I will link these below because they're like $2 or $3 for the set, and they are 5-inch square frames, so they're really, really nice. I like them. I think they're really pretty. So I've used those, and I've also used heart frames from MXR. Now, I've used a lot of stuff and my theme within this card is hearts and flowers. Now, I'm just going to put my little work mat down here. This is a clear silicone mat. You can see it's well used. They do stain up when you use sort of like fluorescing pinks or yellows on them, but they work perfectly okay. So I've popped that down there. I used a corner rounder punch just to take the sharp edges off my background card that I used underneath this lacy frame here, so I used that. This is Dollar Tree glue. It's just their simple jot glue that comes in a big, I think it's an 8-ounce bottle for $1, and I always use Dollar Tree glue when I'm paper piecing. This little needle tip squeezy bottle here is from AliExpress. So I'll just pop that there. I used a pair of scissors. Now I've already done my cutting out, so I'm just going to pop those there. I used a sharp knife, a scalpel or a craft knife, and that's also from AliExpress, so I'll pop that there. I used a pokey tool. This one is also from AliExpress because of course you have to poke the pieces out of the die. And I'm going to be using my wax tip pickup tool. This is also from AliExpress and these are a couple of dollars for 2 or 3. So I'm going to pop that there. And to use my craft knife, I use one of these from AliExpress, which are tiny little cutting mats that you can see. This is seriously dinged up. This one's quite a few years old now, but it's still serviceable and workable for when you're using a craft knife and you're just cutting tiny things. So I use that. To cut my die apart, I use these. These are also from AliExpress, and they just snip the wires that hold the different sections of die together. And if I get a piece that's, you know, stubborn, then I use one of these, which it's got a light on it. It's got a lithium battery in there, so it will stay charged for a very long time. Now, this one's from Walmart, but you can get them on AliExpress and they are cheaper, and you get different kinds of, let's see if we can get some clarity here. Let me find my clear zone. You get different sanding nibs. So if you find you've got a sharp piece on a die, you can just sand it straight off. But be careful, because these are effective and you don't want to go straight through your die. So there is that. And also, so that I don't forget, I'm going to pop my ruler here. And I've also used a few hearts from that pack that I got from Joann's. These are $1.99. I think they're really pretty, and I'm going shopping later and hopefully I can find the brushed silver ones as well. So that is basically what I'm using today. Oh, and of course the 1.5mm flat back beads. So let me show you my card base and then we'll start paper piecing. Right, so here we go. Let me move that bottle of glue out of the way. The whole theme of this, as I said, is kind of like hearts and flowers, so it's just layered up. I call this a fully loaded card. So this is, you know, got everything on it, everything that's pretty and blingy. I've used my AliExpress tiny little pom-pom trim down there and my AliExpress gold leaf trim. That's on there. This gold cardstock is from Tuesday Morning and the white cardstock is from Michael's. This colour cardstock here is from Joanne, and this is a K&Co pad, these here, and this gingham from Tuesday Morning, and there are those little gold hearts there from Joanne. As I say, this is the paper pieced boot, the die that I just showed you, and I'm going to measure that in a second. And these are the little bits of flowers that I cut off from that frame just to add a little bit more interest and a couple of more layers. So let me measure that boot before I forget, and then we'll start paper piecing. Right, that is a fraction over, it's almost 3¼ inches. And then if we go along to where the clouds are, it would be 3½ inches. Well, not clouds, it's actually smoke coming out of the chimney top there. So that is the background. Now this is where the little girl lives. This is my scene for the card, and my little girl is going to go here on dimensionals, popped up just in front of it. So I'll move this out of the way now and let's get to paper piecing. Right, I used this little girl die, and as I say, I put white cardstock underneath hoping that you'd be able to see better, and I've die cut all of my pieces. Now I'm always very honest when it comes to using dies, and if there's not necessarily a problem, if there's a problem I'm going to point it out, but if I feel there's something that could have been done better with a die, then I will absolutely point it out. This is a gorgeous die, but personally if I had designed it, I would have made a section here that would have cut out. Because it didn't, I had to use my craft knife, and I will go back and show you later why I did that. So if I could change anything, it would be that. Now the other thing is the little handle, because this little girl holds a key with a heart keychain. You can see how small that is. Now I do like to paper piece and I do use small things, but that is too small for me to handle. So I'm quite happy to use real thread or twine instead of using the piece of the die. So you can compensate for things like that that may be difficult to hold or see for you. So I'll move that out of the way and I will show you the pieces that I already die cut. Right, let's pop them all here. So here we have them. I've popped them on a piece of pale blue cardstock so that the white shows up, and we have shoes, we have socks, we have shoe buttons, we have the dots that go onto the coat. Now I already know, looking at this, that it's supposed to be a ladybird, and it would be obviously black and red. I didn't want to do that. I wanted my little girl to be blue, and then to start tying in the pink, of which I have so much of in the backgrounds of my card. I've cut her hair pieces in brown here, and that is the little gold hearts keyring. And as I said before, that little piece of that die too small for me, so I have no problem in using real twine, and this twine is from AliExpress. I've already knotted that onto there, and then I will just fix it on with some glue to hold it to the heart, so that she's still got a dangly heart on her keyring, but I just haven't used that part of the die because personally it was too small for me to handle. So right, I'm going to pop this down here. I'm going to get my Dollar Tree glue, which is this stuff, and I've got my pickup tool, and I'm hoping that we've got some clarity. I'm raising that up, and I'm wondering if I should be raising it down. It's so dark here. Let's try that. Don't want to make anybody seasick. It's almost like night time here. Right, so first of all, I'm going to start with the easy bits, which is putting those buttons on the coats, and I'm also going to do them onto the shoes. I'll move my pieces here where you can see them, so you can watch me pick them up, and I'll show you just how quick this process is. I always try to keep things in order so that I can add other bits without mistaking where things go. So those shoes, the buttons are to the outside edge there, so I'm just going to keep them there. Right, now I get my bottle of glue, and I will put a dot where I know all of those dots need to go. And I'm even going to do the shoes. This glue will stay tacky for a couple of minutes, so doing it like that is not a problem. And then with your pickup tool, you just start to pick up the bits that you need. So there's a button for that coat. Try to get it in position. You have got a few minutes, as I say, of wiggle room, and the die is embossed so that you know exactly where you can place your circles. And I did sharpen off my my wax pickup tool before I made this video, because you can get them covered in glue and gunk, and you just use a regular pencil sharpener to make them nice and sticky again. And when I say sticky, they're not horribly sticky. They've just got that slight tack that wax has. So there, already we've finished the coat, and I'm going to move that up there, and I'm going to put the little buttons onto the shoes. So there's one. And of course, what you don't want to do is you don't want to get glue on your pickup tool, otherwise you can't get your stuff to stick down. It will just stay stuck to the end of your pickup tool. So I will also use my pokey tool to kind of slide things around on my mat to get them out of the way. So I'm going to put that there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my dress layers. Now I wanted to cut an edge so that I'd got a shadow, so I cut one in blue and I cut one in the pink, trying to tie things into my background. And as you can see there, the edge, let's see if we can get a close-up, the edge that I cut is giving, oh no, I've got to do something with that camera. Hang on, I'm just going to pause and come back. Okay, so I think that's a little bit better, and we'll try and get some clarity here to show you. You can see the embossed line there, and that's how I cut it. And now I'm just going to glue those together so that I've got that little bit of a blue hem at the bottom there. So to do that, I just very simply get my glue and pop it down. You want it inside of that edge there, and it's quite literally that easy. You see that? scribble that glue on. Now I don't know, well, yeah, no, it's stuck down, but this is big enough to pick up and handle with your fingers. It's the little things that I have a problem with. So slide that down and into place, and that is that done. Can you see how quick this is? It's quick, yes. And now the next thing that you're going to need is you're going to need to place this into the coat. Now that's where I showed you on the die that I said I would have done it differently. And I've taken my craft knife and I've cut that section there because her dress is supposed to go inside of the coat and just barely visible beneath it. Probably I'd go for about that much. So now you can see that her dress is under her coat. Now while I've still got some play within this, I'm going to insert her socks. So I'm going to pick those up, and I need to, whoop, that's it. And there's already glue in there. So I just pop that down, and I'm going to slide her little socks into there so that she's got her legs together. I want them evenly spaced apart, so that's something that I would play around with, and I'm quite happy with that. And the rest of that glue that I've just put in there is going to hold that together. So, oh, I just definitely need a new camera. I mean, I can put a lamp on here, but I don't know how bad that's going to be. Do you see what I mean? Bad reflection. So I'm going to turn it off. So anyway, we've got her socks in there, and they have got that little shadow behind them. So the next thing we can add is her shoes. And I'm going to pop those up there where you can see them. And we're going to put a line of glue along the top edge of the sock, because you don't want to lose too much behind there. And then we're going to place the shoe on top of the sock. And you only need to just barely touch it. And I want her shoes kind of like just to meet at the edges, like she's got that little coy expression. So there, can you see I'm just slightly overlapped on her shoes there. Let's see if we can get a close-up. I think that's probably about as good as it's going to get, which is a shame. Ah, there we go. So she's got her little shoes and her socks. We've got the buttons on. Right, so the next thing, squeezing down, you can see just how quickly this Dollar Tree glue dries. We are going to insert the skirt inside of the coat. And as I said, I wanted not too much sticking out. That's and you need to make sure that she's straight, of course. You want her standing up straight, so I kind of tend to do that. And I think that's probably maybe a bit further up. Yeah, I think that's about right for me. So now I'm going to flip it over, and you can see how much is here. And I'm going to take my glue, I'm going to lift this section up, and I'm just going to run a line of glue behind there and stick it down. That's all that it needs. And then of course I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to press. Don't press too hard. Sometimes some cardstocks can be quite soft and you can end up with a line. So, you know, it becomes very noticeable that you stuck something down there. Right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to do her hair. And I'll just push her little headless body up there for a minute. And we've got hair that goes behind the head so that she's got that whoops, that kind of like flicked out kind of hairstyle going on there, and we want that fairly even. So I'm going to adjust the angle of that so that that's the fringe of her hair, sorry, the back fringe of her hair, and that is like the top of her hair. So I'm going to go with putting down this back piece first. Of course, you can see what order I work in here, and I'm going basically from where I can see is the hairline behind the head, and that's where I've put my glue. And now I'm going to pop that down, and I'm quite happy with that position right there. So that's the back of her hair. Now before I put the fringe down, I want to look at where her hat is going to sit on her head. So I don't know whether I'm going to tuck behind the ears like that and slide it down, and then put the fringe up there. Can you see that? Or whether I'm going to allow the hat at the front of the head. So this is usually where you kind of like, you start to manipulate things. Like if I wanted that there, how am I going to get it behind the ears? You start thinking about things like that as you pop things together. But at the same time, you want to see her hat bands, which is here, this nice little trim. So I do want it behind her ears, but then you've got to think about how do you get it there without twisting it all up, you see, and then you've got that gap. So it could be that I'm just going to have to put her hat to the front of her head, and that's what I'm going to do. So using my glue right on the edge of the head there, I hope you can see that. I'm now going to place her hat, and I'm going to press that down. I'm going to give it a little bit of a wiggle. Whoops. Always good to make errors like this, especially when you're on camera. I think sometimes people kind of labour under the illusion that what everybody does is perfect, and it's not. You'd be surprised how much I make that ends up in the bin, which is why it's always good to have a very plentiful supply of cardstock. So I'm very grateful for Tuesday morning. So that's her little hat on her head, and now I need to get her hair there. So trying to keep my mat straight, I'm going to try and get myself a new background, I think, when I go out shopping. One that will stick down and stay in place. And I quite like that her hair is over the brim of that section. So I'm going to press that down and have a look at it. Can you see that? And of course you can see that she's got 2 holes for the eyes. Now I'm going to use my 1.5mm flatbacks to go onto there, but I will show you how I do that in a second. So here she is, and we can start by popping her head, using her neck of course, inside the collar of her coat. Now we do need to come down there. See, sometimes you don't get that much room to apply your glue, so you have to be quite strong with your fingers in getting exactly what you want from it. So I'm going to be happy to actually place her there where she's got a little bit of her neck showing. So I'm going to go to the very edge of that again, and I'm going to apply my glue here. and I'm going to pick her body up. I'm going to try and look over her because whereas you can see, I can't. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get her on straight. And I think that is. If not, I'm in trouble. So just press that down, and as I said before, you can see just how good this Dollar Tree glue is. I'm just going to give that a few seconds to stick, and then I will wiggle her around and lift her up. Now around here somewhere I have some tape, so hang on just a second. Okay, now I'm going to wiggle her around. I'm going to flip her over, and I've got some tape. Take the top off my scissors. At least I can find my scissors today, and I've cut just a small amount of tape, and I'm going to put that over the area of the eyes. I'm not going to peel the backing off it, I'm just going to leave it just like that. And then I'm going to turn her over again, and as you can see, she's now filled out in the eyes. There is no holes there. And now I'm going to get my 1.5mm flat back beads, and I'm going to grab a couple, pop those onto the mat. It's always good to try and get them the right way around, like that. And I'm going to put a tiny little dot of glue into that section. There we go. I think I might need a little bit more there. There. And pick up tool, and we're going to place that straight onto there. And it was as easy as that. Now all that's left to do is the key and the hands. Now this hand holds the key, and it needs to go this way around so that you can see her hand is bent with the coat. So the key has to go down first so that her hands can go over the top of it. But her other little piece of hand is just down by her side there. It's barely noticeable, and this is where I come in with my pokey tool, and I can see where it needs to be, just like that. So it's just a small suggestion of hand, and I can just move this gently out of the way for a minute, and then just right onto the edges of that hand, and then I can move my coat into place just to grab hold of it, and that looks about right. And then I'll just press, and that's done. So now we need to get the key, and as I said before, I use string because to me that hanging piece was just too small for me to handle. And I'm going to position the key across her body, and I did the key in pink so that it would tie in with everything else. And I'm going to put the key there. That's where I'm going to have it. Yeah, I think that's about right. About there. And I need it to be in a position, of course, where her hand is going to reach. So I just need to look at that, and that's where it's going to go. So first of all, I'm going to flip that bit up gently, and I'm going to apply a small amount of glue under that key section, and then I can go back to the top section of that key when I'm done. Right, next bit is the hand, and I'm going to put my glue down into this edge here, And I don't want to put any glue on the top of the hand, otherwise I know I'm going to end up with this kind of like ugly line, which I don't want. So I just want to be able to stick this bit down here, and there she looks as if she's hanging onto that key. Right, the next step is the heart, and I'm going to use a glue dot, I think, onto there, and these are them. You can use them for all sorts of things, and one of the good things to use them for is not just sticking things down like this, but if you like to make up gift packages for friends, you can make all your fancy bows and your rosettes and stuff like that, and you can use these dots and then package all your things stuck down onto acetate, and then when your friend gets them, they peel really easily off the acetate and they can stick them down onto their own projects. So next thing I need to do is I need to trim off some of this twine here, and I'm going to go right there because I just don't want it too long, and I need to fix it down while she's on my mat. And I'm going to grab those two pieces together, and I'm just going to stick that there, and then because it's silicone I can lift it up. I've got a little stray bit there that I don't really want to see, so I can go in and cut that off, and I'm quite happy with that. Now all that's left for me to do is to flip her over. I'm going to use that sort of sticky bit to hold the rest of it down, and I have my Dollar Tree sticky pads. So these are in the auto section of Dollar Tree, and I usually get loads and loads of them. And when you're doing something like this, you do want to use quite a few to get some good dimension, and to know that she's not going to be crushed if you send her through the post and stuff like that. So that's quite a few to have there. Now I know that I've got my pom-pom trim that's at the bottom, so I'm not going to stick her feet because the pom-pom trim is going to help to kind of like raise her up down there. And now I'm just going to peel off the backing of those sticky pads. This has been a very long video, and I hope it hasn't been too blurred without, because as I say, I'm working away and I can't really see what's going on the camera or anything else, and I just hope that everything was in image and that it looked okay. So now, because this has got glue and yuck on it, I'm going to move it, and I'm going to bring our card base in and pop that down, and then I'm going to decide whereabouts she's going to be in relation to her little house, and I think I'm going to pop her there. And then she's got just that tiny little heart hanging off of her keyring, and I'm going to stick that there. And so there you have it. All of those different layers, all of those different colours, they just all come together because you've got your blues and your lilacs and your pinks in the florals, and then you've got the pink floral of her dress, which ties into one of the hearts that's behind these layers, and the whole thing just comes together, and it's just as easy as that. Well, I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. Let's see if we can get a couple of close-ups as to what we did. So there she is with a little string. Instead of using the die, you've got all those little trims to make it look pretty. I'm going to measure her now that she's fully made up, and she is 4 1/4 inches, and I'll just pop her down. And then in the angle that I've got the key there, she's 2 1/4 inches wide. So I just think she's really pretty, and I think anyone would be pleased to get that, because the layers are just lovely, and it's very, very girly, and it's very pretty. Now, the last thing that people wanted to see was the easel on the back. So I'm going to carefully flip that over so that I don't crush anything. And you can see that there. If I was sending it to someone, I would write the message there. They can see quite clearly where the bend marks are when they get it. They can just lift that up. So I'm being careful just in case anything drops off that I've just glued down. And that will, just like that, and stand up for them. And I do apologise that my camera wasn't better, but if I move that stuff out of the way, you can see that that easel does work. I love it. It's a great size. So that's what it would look like. And then if I just fold it down flat, and I can show you again. So I hope that that was useful, and I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. I'm going away now, and I'll be back on Friday. As usual, all links are below, and you have a great time. Bye.